republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I guess everyone was missing each other.
I guess so. We have no agenda adjustments. 2, the consideration of the minutes. 2.1, to approve the minutes of our April 24th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
I'll abstain.
He wasn't here, so he's me.
I seconded.
Now we will head down to 3, public comment. At this time, I will offer the public the opportunity to come to the microphone, and once you do, please state your name and where you're from. We ask that you leave any teachers' names or student names, refrain from your comment. 4, we have no petitions or communications. We'll move right down to 5, reports. The superintendent's report.
I just want to do, a huge shout out this week to all our staff for staff appreciation. It's a great week to celebrate all the hard work everyone does in every role of our school department. And it's been fun to do all the events, from smoothies to shout outs to breakfasts to lunches. So lots going on for everybody, and so we just so appreciate our staff. And so it's been a great week with that. Lots going on, I mean, from assemblies to evening events. People really have been going all out in hard work and commitment to share things with parents and families, and acknowledge all the great work our students are doing. So it's that time of year where we get to celebrate all the hard work.
Thank you. We will move right down to 5.4, director's report, starting with technology. Norma Jean.
Everybody can click their own slides.
Welcome, everybody. I just wanted to give you a quick update. It feels like it's been
Not hear you.
Got to be right up close. They're rock star.
okay. Does that work?
Yeah.
Only the husband's the rock star, not me. Okay, here we go. All right, so it feels like it's been forever since we've done a director's report. So I just wanted to get you up to date on everything. So I want to update you on the cybersecurity grant, the DOE Cyberstorm that I attended, which was really cool for a tabletop exercise, the Spring Atom Conference, which was this week, and the stuff that we're doing for spring assessment support and end of year prep. So for the grant update, and I think we updated the finance and facilities, there were 2 aspects of that grant. It is almost finished, so we upgraded our Google Workspace. We got an amendment, push it off towards the end of the year so it would go through next year. And so it wouldn't have any impact on next year's budget, which was great. And then we're in the process of doing a Google audit. And so we want to start using Google as our authenticator, so like a single sign-on. And so we want to make sure that that environment is clean, the rights are, up to snuff. And so it's like a lot of work, and so we're doing all that now. And as part of that, we've been rolling out these cute little keys to everybody at central office. It's like a hardware key, so it's sort of like something you know, something you have, so someone can't get into your account unless they know your password and also have that key. And so we've been doing the central office. We're working with the central office administrators, and then I'm working my way starting next week with the building admin, and then working nurses and then staff. So we're kind of, the most amount of data to the left is what we're working on. All right, and so this was a really cool thing, and I'm going to age myself, but I loved Dungeons and Dragons back in the day. And so this was like an amazing virtual Dungeons and Dragons type of event. So it was like the storm has arrived, so they gave you a whole scenario of a school being compromised, right up to like, you get a notice that, cyber attacks are on the increase in K-12, and then you have a disgruntled employee leave, and then nobody notifies you, and their account is still open, and so it was this whole cool thing. There were 10 of us that moderated, and we had a group of like 10 attendees underneath us, but those 10 attendees might have been a whole group of a school. So it was not as fun as if you were playing, but it was really cool to moderate that. So, and it was put on by MLTI, Department of Education, the Tech Directors Group, and then CISA, which is an agency that does cybersecurity and infrastructure. So that was amazing. All right, and I know you guys have access to this, so I just want to put if you wanted to read it later, if you were like into like that whole scenario. And then on Monday, there was the Actum conference down in Portland. Its theme as well was cybersecurity, and so there was all kinds of like really cool sessions, the vendors trying to sell you everything, which is great. But it was also, I put a couple fun slides here, like the top one, I kind of blocked it out a little bit, but it was kind of, where we don't have as much servers on site. We have a lot more virtual services. And so like PowerSchool is on the cloud. So all this stuff. And so we dream, if you can't really see it, but over in the top right, there's like this castle, like a Disney castle. You hope it's there, it's secured. You've got your castle and your moat. But it might be in a little shack off to the side. And you just don't know it. So you have to like be, really careful which vendors you're working with and make sure that they have your best interest as well as theirs. So that was a really cool conference. And the picture underneath the castle has like a list of vendors that have had a cybersecurity incident of one level or another. And some of those are the vendors we work with, and they've been really good to work with, and they notify us. And so that's a really good thing. And then we're working on spring assessment support right now. So we have 2 flavors of NUIA going on. We have the through year, and then we have the MAP at the grades that aren't, administered by the state. We have AP testing, even though we do a little bit of support. It's mostly making sure they have devices and they have electric and that type of thing. And now next week we're moving into MEA Science, and we do a lot of the setup and doing their rostering and helping them print cards and that type of thing. And then we're already focusing on end of year planning. So collecting those senior devices, because they'll be leaving us soon. And then grades 5 through 8, so the grades where they go home, so make sure everything comes back so we can prepare it for next year. Staff movements, so as they're moving building to building, or if they are leaving us or retiring, just making sure we have those devices and everything back for the people coming in. And then summer school prep, so we're working on summer devices to make sure we have everything set up. And then the classroom tech kits, so for like a lot of the teachers that go to Care Ricker, or also the middle school teachers that go to the high school, it's not their classroom, so we want to make sure they have everything they need in their classroom so that they can hit the ground running. And then we're just working on end of year processing for student information systems, state reporting, working on the different programs that have end of year processes like our point of sale. And then we're updating the new student registration packet, which is going to look a lot better. So that's it for me, I think. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Question?
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
So on the collection,
Mhm.
you said grades 5 through 8 are the ones that go home. How about 9, 10, 11?
Yep. So the seniors we get back,
Right.
and then the high school they take theirs home for them for the summer.
So they don't need to come back to be refurbished. They're gonna.
No, they visit us if they need anything, and we always have spares ready for them. So they do take theirs home for the summer. There's lots of summer activities. We used to collect them, but they're in and out all the time for different things, and it became easier for them to have them for the summer.
That's a good decision.
Hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Norma Jean.
Can all hear me okay? All right. So, like Norma Jean, I echo that it's been a little while, so I wanted to show and share some projects along with some pictures of some things that have been happening. So, first project is the SPS water fountains done in March of this year. So, basically, the whole purpose of this was because we had lead and we wanted to provide clean and accessible drinking water to staff and students. So we put in a water fountain centrally located upstairs and then one down by the cafeteria. And then the picture in the top, you can kind of see where some new piping is piped into the source. So what they did was they bypassed all of the internal piping with new piping, new PEX, tied it right into the source, which was at 0 parts per billion lead. So it completely bypassed any lead contaminants. And then, the bottle fill stations are reducing waste, so I thought that was a great touch. At the high school, we replaced the burglary panel. That panel was on the fritz, causing a lot of nuisance calls and alarms in the middle of the night, a lot of OT, a lot of unnecessary calls. from Androscoggin County. They did not become my friend after a little while, and they had to go to the school and see a completely dark building. So we replaced some aging equipment. But the great part about this was that we were able to use local and user-friendly service. So ER Field monitors and maintains the rest of our buildings. So now it's, one vendor under the same umbrella, district-wide consistency, and our reduced yearly monitoring costs, average annual savings about $1,400 a year compared to the company that was monitoring and maintaining the high school's security system. At the high school as well, the section replacement. So for those who aren't familiar, some pictures are a really great way to sort of understand what had happened. So we had a leak in the section, so the boiler was in essence unable to be used. We did have a secondary boiler, but doing this repair maintained redundant systems, and it was covered under an insurance claim. But those sections that they're lifting in place are about 800 pounds apiece. So obviously, some pretty cool equipment to get that in and out. So I thought I'd share that with you. Libby Tozer Shed. So December 18th, the storm that we had, it blew a good chunk of the roof off, and so we had the insurance company come out, take a look at it, gave us some money to fix it, and then after a contractor went up there and looked at it, they saw that the roof joists and rafters were rotting out. So we came up with a new plan. We removed and demoed the shed entirely and replaced it with the shed that you can see down there at the bottom. In doing so, it replaced it with a more usable building for the staff. It remediated an aging oil tank that was inside that red shed, which really needed to be done anyways, because if that tank were to leak and DEP were to come in, it would be tens of thousands in oil spill cost to remediate. So trying to get ahead of some stuff, and in doing this also, because we can demo that shed down to nothing, we move the shed somewhere else. We're moving the dumpsters over, increasing parking spaces out back for Libby Tozer. Obviously increased curb appeal, and all the costs associated were covered by insurance. And the Libby Tozer sewer pump and panel. I don't have a picture of the pump inside the confined space, but we were having some problems with the gray water being pumped up and away from the school. So we replaced a 45-year-old panel with a new one, which is in the top right. We fixed obviously some exposed wiring and addressed some ongoing issues. And so one pump was replaced, and we're looking to do the second pump for redundancy's sake over the summer. And then finally, for facilities, I just want to remind you, the COPS grant is back open again. We didn't get it last year. I feel a lot better about going about it this year. And again, that's the application for getting key card entry to the rest of the buildings besides the middle school. So the June 11th and 17th are the application submission deadlines. The grant awards in October, and if we get it, my assumption would be that our project completion would be February of 25. And that's, again, key carding the entire district, all the buildings, and then rekeying the outside of those buildings, so we have full control, access, and accountability of which buildings, where the keys are, who has access to the buildings. Right now, it's a little bit up in the air, I guess is the best way to put it, okay? Transportation, some great things to talk about here. So, bus driver training program. I, in line with ELDT, FMCSA, the main BMV, created a driver training regiment and curriculum, so we could get some new drivers in the door and driving the buses. So I just wanted to kind of give you some idea of the summary, the results, and the stats. So basically, if a prospective driver wants to become a licensed driver, I will supply them with a training regiment, curriculum, and a timeline, and a driver to help them. The driver will do the online knowledge course, get their written test from the BMV and pass it, get their commercial learner's permit, start behind the wheel training with one of our bus drivers. Once they complete that and pass a driving test with the BMV, they're a licensed school bus driver. And that's in summary. So the results, we've employed 2 full-time drivers and have 2 substitute trip drivers currently still in training. And I wanted to welcome, and you can see in the picture below, Matt Bramlett and Marge Levesque. They've been driving full force for us in a flex capacity, so covering when buses are down. And I won't name names, but one of them likes to sing songs to the students, and that comes at a lot of popularity with both staff and kids. And some proven stats. I thought this was really interesting. I did some number crunching, and from the start of school to April 1st, we had 330 runs canceled. So 330 meaning an AM run, a PM run, both, pre-K, something of the like. So if I have a driver who is out sick and they do an AM run, a PM run, a pre-K run, and a late bus, there's 4. So there's a lot there, right? So, and that's not including our driver who's been out for the entirety of the year. So that's just of regular, hey, I'm sick, hey, I can't work, something comes up. Our last canceled run was April 2nd, and since April 2nd, we've actually had 50 run absences since then to today. But with the addition of these new drivers through this program, we've had 50 of those covered, which is the goal that we had in mind, right, with bringing new staff members in, keeping the runs going. So really happy to put proof in the pudding with some of those stats. We did some bus evacuations. We had one yesterday at SPS. We did this during school hours, so we had a higher volume of students run through it, which was great. SRO Brown assisted with the evacuations and reiterated some safe bus behaviors. And then upcoming on Friday the 10th, we have high school and middle school during normal drop-off, and then we're doing Libby Tozier and Carrie Ricker separately, again with the assistance of Megan Brown to help with some of those bus behavior, discussions with the kids. I had a bus driver workshop and wellness event. Shout out to Jessica Coulomb who put on the wellness event. You can see her pictured standing in the top photo. Up top, you have some drivers playing bingo. Down below, you had some drivers playing cornhole. So we had, bingo, cornhole, great team building exercises, some fun things for them to do. Lunch, of course, and then, the administrative fun stuff that they like to hear me talk about and get through the day. But we're going to have a similar event at the end of the school year, maybe a cookout, something or other. I heard from many of the drivers that this was one of the best events that they've had so far at their time here at RSU4. So I thought that was great and wanted to share that. And then finally, I shared this with all of you, but I wanted to at least have it out in the public. So I'm going to shout out to Nancy, actually, who got me in contact with the Maine Department of Transportation. But they have a grant going out where they're supplying these speed limit signs with radars and with solars. So, excuse me. So I reached out to the Maine Department of Transportation. I have secured 5 signs, one for each school. They're completely free. We have to assemble them and install them, but I'm looking for Public Works to kind of help me with that. And sign delivery is to be determined based on when the grant closes, but I'll keep you all posted with that, okay? Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Nancy.
Good evening, everybody. I had the, whoops, you hear me? I had the amazing opportunity a couple months ago to go to a free conference put on by RSU1 in Bath at Morse High School. And the conference was on unified academics and athletics. And if you're not familiar with unified programming, it's when students with cognitive disabilities are paired with typical students for whatever the activity is. And probably most of you have heard of unified basketball, and you're aware that we participate in that. But it goes well beyond that. So at Morse High School, they offer unified basketball, they offer unified volleyball, unified music, unified PE, and then unified literacy and unified science. So the conference I went to did speak to all of those things, but mostly it was focusing on the literacy and science, the academic unified. So the unified, well, first of all, just say how the day was set up. So when we went, the superintendent talked at great length to us about the positives of having unified programming in your district. And we had teachers speaking, and then we had presentations put on by the teachers, which it's a co-taught model for unified literacy and science. They took us through the class and what they do in those classes, but the students weren't there. And then we had lunch, and there was a panel, which was probably the most moving thing I've ever been to in my life. A panel of students who, with both disabilities and without, were part of that panel. Grandparents came to be on the panel. Parents came to be on the panel. Alumni, mentors, and mentees came to speak as well. It was amazing. So instead of using mentor-mentee, they used the term learning partners. So the typical learning partner can earn as well for being part of this. So it's an English elective for unified literacy. It's a one-semester class, but it's offered twice at half a credit. In this integrated reading, writing, and art literacy class, this year they did presentations on Nice to Meet You, where students designed their own artwork to sort of describe who they were, and I have an example of this. They did something on Black history. They had quilting because they have people come in from the community to support as well. They did something on the Iditarod, and they had a poetry month. Every single literacy class is set up with a book buddies time, small group discussion, and then games, puzzles, or some kind of art integration. So one of the people that they had who was doing a residency there while we were there is a writer in Bath. So they really are seeking anybody's talents in the community. And she was very integrated in everything they were doing. This picture was not a picture that I took, as you can see from the mask. This was a while back. But this might be a typical book buddies thing they might see during that class time. This is what a typical class might look like. The lady on the left is the librarian who runs that class and co-teaches it with the FLS teacher, who's also in there. They are very heavy into visuals as well. This is one of the projects done on the Nice to Meet You by one of the students, which I thought was pretty cool. I'll just read it. I am a gamer and I am autistic. I want to play Minecraft. I say go team. I wonder about friendship. I am Lucas Philbrick. I worry about my friends. I am a gamer and I'm autistic. I understand how everything works. I dream of making Lily happy and hanging out. Again, this might be a typical thing that you would see, just kids reading together. They take turns reading. Every year, since 22, when they started it, they've done something called a literary magazine. They have an art and poetry gala where a lot of people come from the public. It's open to go see all their art and poetry works. And reading roundup. In the Unified Science, the mentor can also earn a half a credit. It's a whole year class. So the way that's set up is they use an integrated science model that teaches a curriculum called Every Science Every Year. It teaches content, transferable reasoning skills to be used throughout a lifetime. So it integrates life science, physical science, earth and space science into every year's program. And ideally, the students who are in FLS are enrolled for all 3 years to meet the science graduation credits. So while we were there, when we visited the science class in the afternoon, when we actually saw students in the classes, they were wrapping up a unit on photosynthesis. It was very cool. The projects the kids had worked on were amazing. So to become a mentor, there's a 1-week training for recruited mentors. And I say recruited because they really do actively look for students, typical students in the high school who are going to make this work, who are going to give 100% effort, who are very motivated. They don't have to know anything about disabilities. They just have to be motivated students. They do an orientation that really teaches kids how to be 100% active with the partner that you're with. You have the same partner for the entire class throughout that entire class time. They learn that they are not considered helpers for those students. They actually are learning partners. They learn how to be a reading buddy. The speech pathologist comes in during that week and does trainings for each of the students in the FLS for the learning partner to how best to communicate with that student. So they may be learning how to use a device themselves. They may be using other communication strategies. So the panel was amazing. We heard so many amazing things. These are actually quotes that I had written from the panel. This was the typical student said, I had no idea what I was getting into. It's the best thing I've ever done. And we kept hearing that over and over from people. It was the best thing they've ever done. That student said, I dropped the class I was supposed to take U Science again. Another typical student said, it's not just about the knowledge. Everybody walks away having gotten some skin out of the game. It can be emotional in a way that you didn't expect. So what kids typically do, they find, is that they sign up again. They'll skip a different elective to come back and do Unified again. Let's That's just another example. A student with disabilities said, I feel more welcome in the high school this year. Another student said, at first I didn't know if I wanted to do it. This was a student with disabilities. Then I was like, this is pretty great. I would walk to class and talk to all my friends every day. And what they noticed was some of the behaviors went down because those students were now engaged with typical kids. They eat lunch with them. They hang out, not all the time, but enough so that it really has made a difference behaviorally. In the school, it's quite noticeable. Another mentor said, it's been a blessing in disguise. Connecting with Charlie would have been impossible without you, Science. I'm going into the special ed field in the fall. Charlie has pushed me. This year I'm a team leader. It's a huge thing that I'm grateful for. They just don't care about the mentees, but the mentors too. So I think this program is not driven by special education. You really noticed it. I happened to go as a special ed administrator, but most of the people there were not in special education. It's very much a regular ed driven program. And they really, the mentors, I just could not believe what the mentors kept saying they got out of this program. There was a kid going to MIT, and he really wanted to make some kind of a communication device at MIT for kids. I mean, it really has affected their post-secondary plans for a lot of those kids. One of the alumni mentors said, it's about getting you out of your comfort shell. You learn about yourself. You have to be vulnerable. Go dance to YMCA. The impact you make lasts your whole lifetime. And this is from the art night, the art gala. So how'd they get here? Well, in 2021, the FLS teacher was really just looking for some time in the library where they have this beautiful couch thing set up, and he wanted some of his kids to have access to that too. So as he and the librarian were talking, they really decided they wanted to try something as a class together. So this took a whole year to get off the ground. They just started with that one class. They had to really get support from coworkers, the administrators. Everything they did was really sort of on the cheap. They did not pay a lot of money to get this program off the ground. And then they sort of they targeted who they thought would be good fits for that very first class. I think they had 6 students with disabilities and 6 without. And the take-home message really was for anybody looking to start this program, and most of us, out of the 30 participants who went to this first annual conference, people were looking, how do you do it? The classroom should be in a very visible place in the school. So as it turned out, Morse High School has a beautiful new high school. And they have a couple of rooms that one of the walls is completely glass. And it is adjacent to, I think it's the cafeteria. So you could actually see the classes going on in there. And so kids were going, what are they doing? What is that? So people were really watching it. They didn't tuck it away somewhere. They made it as visible as they possibly could. It's not why they built that way, but that's how it turned out as to be a blessing for Morse High School. Start small, just start with one class, target your recruitment of mentors, and use all the local talent and resources that you can. They offered all kinds of books as resources because Special Olympics is really behind the whole thing. That they really started this. So Special Olympics has offered all kinds of free resources. So me talking for 5 minutes really does not do it justice. That was their first conference, and it's free. Next year they'll be doing it again because it was a really big hit. I would encourage everybody to go that is interested in this, and hopefully some high school people will go too. And that's it. Thank you.
Jill,
Thank you, Nancy.
Jill, ask a question. Sure. Nancy, this looks like a program that you could really build on. People want to get into. Did they notice that it was helping their outplacement because those students wanted to stay in the schools?
I had a conversation at lunchtime with somebody, and I said, "What about kids with, behaviors who would be
Right.
outplace eligible?" They just didn't. They didn't have that typical population in their FLS
They haven't just
program.
gotten that deep yet.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Nancy. Brian?
not used to this whole sitting ordeal. Good evening, everybody. I'll start out with just kind of giving a shout out to our esports team. The esports programs have a unique sports season that kind of go in between the other traditional sports seasons. So their season just wrapped up last week, and Rocket League and Super Smash Bros. Made it to the state semifinals, which is the furthest either of those programs have gone in school history. So that's super exciting to see the success that program has had in the short few years we've had that. Next, last week, maybe it was a week before, a week or two ago, I was able to bring a handful of student athletes to Winthrop High School. Our Mountain Valley Conference hosted the Taylor Hooten Foundation. Taylor Hooten was a young man who unfortunately dealt with severe negative consequences of taking steroids. So this was a representative from the foundation who came in and spoke about stimulants, supplements, steroid use, all those things for some of our athletes, which is super informational. Even some of the things, I even took things out of it, that I didn't know from stimulants and other things, and how, taking different caffeinated drinks before and after physical activity and how it impacts you, and the drive of the stimulants and supplements and all those with athletics and everyday life. So it was very enrichful for our student athletes who did attend. And then just a couple of shout outs to some of our student athletes. So you see our January and February athlete of the months there. As you can see, it's been a while since we've done director's reports. And then also in the middle, one of our hockey players at the high school received the Hobie Baker Character Award, which essentially is one student athlete from every sports team for hockey in the state of Maine gets recognized, and it's for exemplifies student character, sportsmanship, so on and so forth on the ice. So Eli had received that. And then this was actually back in March. This is an annual conference that the Mountain Valley Conference holds. We have Proactive Coaching comes in. It's a company nationwide who talks about leadership and athletics. So this was another MVC-sponsored event where schools from the Mountain Valley Conference gathered at Winthrop High School. And again, it was talking about how to be a leader on and off the field, at the court, how to exemplify, how to get student engagement, how to deal with student, coach, and parent conflict, all of that, things under that nature. And then lastly, just recognizing that we did hold an updated ALICE training a month or two ago for the rest of our coaches. So some of our coaches who don't work in the district were not able to attend the initial ALICE training at the beginning of the year. So we've been working carefully with SRO Brown to make sure that we had an opportunity for those people to attend. Unfortunately, due to scheduling circumstances, it didn't happen as early as we wanted, but we were able to offer it to a variety of coaches and other staff members who were not able to attend that initial date. So they have also had the opportunity to receive the ALICE training. Any questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Jim?
Good evening. Thanks for letting me talk a little bit about Adult Ed tonight. We offered our first pickleball class. We tried to offer it last year and didn't get enough to run it, but we had 12 out there last night for their second class. The first class was in the gym. I wish I would have taken pictures last night out on the tennis courts. It was so nice. We decided to go outside. But somebody needed a partner, so I played, so I didn't have time to take pictures, and I'm paying for it today. But they've also asked about having a second session, so we're going to go through these 4 weeks and see if we can offer maybe some league play. We're just starting to get into scoring and that type of stuff. Essential education. I went to a conference and learned a little bit more about this program. As you can see, it does several things. We use it primarily for the high school equivalency, for the HiSET. It's you can basically customize, look at what somebody had trouble with on their HiSET practice tests, and then customize a lesson to address those issues. So, for instance, somebody will come in, struggle with math. They need an 8 to be considered prepared. They may have gotten a 5, but I can break down what they were not successful at. It might be fractions, it might be geometry, and then assign a curriculum that they can do at home or do with us at school, and they can work on it and practice it and try to get that level up to an 8, so when they come in to take it again, they pass. And I think I talked about this a little bit before in the past, but so we do a pre-test, and we don't do the official tests until they're absolutely prepared, because they can only do 3 in a calendar year. We don't want them to fail, so we do pre-tests until they're prepared. So that's been a great resource. We're going to use it a lot more. I think there's a lot of other things we can use it for, including literacy and just math refresher for college prep and that type of stuff. So was really glad to have that resource. And then lastly, we have our graduation on May 30th at 6 p.m. It'll be in the auditorium at the high school. We have 7 right now, 1 testing next week that may pass, may not, but 7 graduates. I feel like probably 5 of them are going to march this year based on my conversations with them. We also have 7 from Lisbon, so we'll have 14 total graduates for the program this year. And I will say, I think I mentioned it earlier, we had some students struggling, and I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to pass before the graduation. But with that HiSET Academy, which is the essential education, 3 of those students did pass within the last 2 to 3 weeks. So I can't emphasize enough how valuable that program is. So that helped 3 students be able to graduate this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. It does say on here a student report, but they gave report last meeting, so it'll be next meeting. There's no old business. We'll move right down to new business, 7.1. To elect Shelley Mogul as the Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment ESSA Coordinator as recommended by the Superintendent of Schools.
So moved.
Second.
Shelley is here. If you would like to come up to the mic, please. Should I steal your thunder, Bob, or would you like the thunder?
She was included in ahead of time?
No.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi.
Here I am in the hot seat again.
Okay. Okay, so I had seen her, so she was warned. So go right for it.
So I always like the question asked, what brought you to RSU 4?
Well, that's a great question. So I live in Auburn, and I worked for many, many years, most of my career in Auburn. And the last 3 years I've been in Bethel, SAD 44. And so but I've known Kathy for a very long time, and I've been very aware of her work. And so when the opportunity arose to come to RSU 4, I thought, what a great way to come back to my community and work in a district that's been doing great work and that has great staff. So I'm looking forward to the transition.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Laura?
I just had one. Is this the new position? Can you help me? Thank you.
Yes, it's a new title.
Grant.
Although I do like CIA. It makes me feel special.
And the
The title should have
ESSA
been-
coordinator is the
The
title.
grant for
is
the.
grant,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for noticing that. Yeah, I didn't even pick up.
I didn't either, so I apologize because I saw this beforehand and I didn't even see that it said it that way either. So, anyone else? All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All right.
Thank you very
welcome
much.
aboard, Shelley.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
7.2 to approve first year probationary to second year probationary professional contract, and the list was attached to your packet.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay. Thank you. 7.3 to approve second year probationary to continuing professional contract. That list was also attached to your packet.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All right, thank you. 7.4 to approve a 2-day camping trip to Warren Island Islesboro, I'm assuming that's here in Maine,
It is.
scheduled for June 12th through the 14th as part of the Oak Hill High School Summer School Program. Maximum number of students is 11, and it will be mostly funded by the DOE Outdoor Learning Grant.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay? And I believe,
He's
already here.
Oh, yeah.
If there are any questions.
go ahead and let us know a little bit about the trip, because I think you have like 3 of them.
Yeah, I'm the
them
next.
here.
Well, actually, the thing you just voted on is really more important because in my second year, and you've given me that status, so I appreciate that first. And you're not asking any questions about that, so that's good.
So tell us a little bit about this trip.
Yeah, this trip, Warren Island in Penobscot Bay, a 30-minute to 45-minute boat ride. We are accompanying Teens to Trails leader Samantha Andrews, who is a registered Maine guide. Myself and 11 other students, 11 students are going to go on this trip, and we're going to camp out. We're going to do some hiking. We're going to do a service project when we arrive.
Some people might not know who you are. Can you introduce yourself?
That's probably where I should have started. In my second year here at Oak Hill High School, I'm a physical education teacher, and also have restarted, I should say, because I've had a lot of people come up to me and say they've enjoyed it. But our outing club, something I guess existed here for a long time, and it's back and running now, and that's something that's why I'm asking for this tonight as part of our outing club at the high school.
Your name.
Timothy Farah.
Thank you. You said everything else but your name.
Well, I was making sure you were paying attention.
Okay. Any other questions, Christy?
I just have a couple of questions. So I looked at what was provided to us. I just had a couple of questions, particulars around like inclement weather, and if you're on a boat, what is the safety pieces as we're thinking about allowing students to do those things?
Yeah, we go through a contract that is chartered through a company that does ferrying across the island. I'm not familiar with their policies, but I'm assuming it's following U.S. Coast Guard and that. And we're not out in open water. We're motoring across the bay. As far as inclement weather, I mean, we will have gear for rainstorms. I mean, if there's a hurricane in June, we won't be going. We'll make that decision. But yeah, that's our plan there. Mosquitoes, I'm sure we'll have a plan for those as well.
Brown-tail moth.
Yeah.
All the things. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Scott?
It says mostly funded by DOE grant. Could you define mostly?
Kathy? I saw that as well. I wanted to have a better answer. Yeah.
He nabbed me before we came in. So our summer school program is right now funded through the ARP funds. So the equipment and the other things that Tim is going to be using is funded through this DOE Outdoor Learning Grant. We got $67,000 to get kayaks and the camping equipment and fishing and things that I don't even know what to do with that Mr. Tim is going to be using. So that's we've gotten all the materials from biking. We have 4 different units that we'll be using during the regular school year and then also offering during our summer program. So some of our programming will be paid through the ARP funds, so those COVID funds, and the rest of it will be paid out of this DOE learning grant.
So no cost to participants or taxpayers.
Correct. Those are kind of the stipulations.
Food, they may have to provide their own snacks on the road. I mean, that incidental stuff. But yeah.
What else? Sorry, did that answer your question, Scott?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? No? All right. So as there's no more further discussion on this, I will ask for the vote. All those in favor? Then we will move down to 7.5 to approve a 2-day hiking camping trip to Mount Katahdin scheduled for July 16th through the 18th as part of the Oak Hill High School Summer School Program. Maximum number of students is 11, mostly funded by the DOE Outdoor Learning Grant.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Mount Katahdin is the tallest mountain in Maine. We'll be going there. I've taken students there, several different places I've worked up over the years, and it is if you haven't done it, it's a Maine experience that everybody should experience. You know, if you're a 4th grader in Maine, you read about Don Fendler, and if you're lucky enough, you got to meet him. But then you get to see that mountain, and it's a pretty special place. And I've taken, like I said, I've taken many trips up there with students and players from my teams over the years, and it's impactful beyond that journey. And so I think it's a great thing to take to our kids. The excitement for this has been awesome. I've talked about it, said this could happen, and I have kids come up to me every day that want to do this. So I'm very excited about that. We'll be camping out again overnight in the Millinocket region, and we'll be hiking one day and then coming back the next. So it's a 3-day thing. There's a 1 day before, kind of a prep, and I'm excited about what we're going to do.
Any other further discussion or questions? So the funding is probably assuming the same. Seeing as there's no more discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? 7.6, to approve a 5-day canoeing camping trip to Rapid River at Cedar Point Campground on Lake.
Umbagog.
Thank you. Is scheduled for August 12th through the 16th as part of the Oak Hill High School summer program. Maximum number of students is 6, mostly funded by a DOE outdoor learning grant.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Tell us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, this is the headwaters of the Androscoggin River. This is one of the protected areas in our state. We share with New Hampshire the Bagog federal protected area. It's a great trout fishery, and it's a great way to learn about our river system. But it's also we will be learning some whitewater skills. We will start on flat water and see where the week takes us as far as those skills go. We'll be accompanied with another registered Maine guide that's got whitewater experience from Mountain Valley High School, and we'll be out on this rustic campground for the camp spot, not a campground, for that duration of that time.
Any other questions?
So
Steve?
6 Oak Hill students, and then how many other students from other schools are going?
I don't know. I believe it's another 6 from Mountain Valley. I don't know their exact
So
number.
just
That's
those-
our plan. Yeah.
just those two-
Yep.
two
Yeah, we
schools.
can handle those people from upriver, I hope. But yeah, that's where we're gonna. Yeah, we've teamed up with them.
And then the other question that I didn't ask about the other trips, how are you selecting?
We have got. Marco's going to answer this one. We've met and talked about this, and we've got our. You have to apply through the summer school process. It's under that umbrella. And then we're going to look towards students that may need credit, because this is a possibility for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is for enrichment for other students as well. And we've got an application, and we will have, I know we met with guidance and with an admin to kind of come up with that plan. And that's, we've got a deadline, I believe, next week of applying. I think that's if I read it correctly. But I don't have a better answer than that. That's our
There's a
first year
process.
process. Yeah.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Scott, did you?
Oh, Christy asked my same question. I want to know if I can go.
I was going to say, I do appreciate Tim has been very. We asked similar questions that you did when they came through around safety. This trip has a smaller group of students for a reason, because of safety.
Yeah.
So he's assured us he's going to have everything in place. Parents are going to sign permission slips, understanding the risk of these trips, so they understand. We also checked with our insurance company, make sure we're all set to go, because we want to make sure everybody is going on a trip, and we consider liability, safety, training. So this one, Tim knows that there's expectations, and he's a Maine guide, so he understands the things that need to be in place.
Laura?
And then maybe not on this specifically, but is there any opportunity maybe in the future to offer some of this through our enrichment courses, that like parents and their kids could sign up for things like this and go do those things?
I am certainly open to that,
Yeah.
and that's something I don't know if we've talked that far, but that's something we'd be open to for sure. One of the requirements of the grant is that this is used and accessible to the community for sure. Some of the projects we've done around the school this year, we have a trail system we're working on in our projects class. So we don't want that just to be for the 12 kids in the class. That's a community thing. We want our school to be a beacon of academic achievement, but also activity, and it's the heartbeat of our community. So yeah, that's something we would definitely want to pursue.
Diane?
What about transportation?
We'll be using RSU4 van.
Anyone else? All right, Seeing as no more discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Kids.
Thank you. Have fun.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Will you
I
come
hope
back
to
and
see
tell us all
pictures.
about it?
Yes.
Bring us pictures.
Actually, that would be fine. I had to present for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'd love to
Thank
hear
you.
about it.
Keep the camera dry.
All right, we'll move down to 7.7. I hereby move the board approve the proposed tax exempt with MST Government Leasing LLC for the purposes of refinancing and funding photocopy equipment leases, including consultant fees and related costs of issuances of such leases in an amount not to exceed $147,167 and $66.56. That's a lot written out like that. And an interest rate of 5.94% per year through August 1st, 2029. That was a mouthful.
Motion. Right?
Second.
Thank you. For my discussion, is there somebody who can explain to us what this means? I just mentioned a whole bunch of jargon that I don't understand.
The finance committee did review this earlier, twice now, but you want Samantha to explain?
If somebody
Or
could,
Doug?
that would
Doug,
be
do
great.
you want to
Doug, can
explain?
you do it?
Yeah, I don't mind trying to.
Because not all of us are on the
I
finance
have both
committee.
of them, so do you
Yeah.
want me to do it, Doug? Because I was at the last one.
If you want, yeah.
So there's a packet, there's a information in the packet too. It's to kind of redo our copier contract across the district, upgrade a bunch of equipment, and go with a new local company that is in Maine as well. So it's really to kind of get everyone on the same platforms and the same repairs and the same all of those pieces. So and then we are looking. There's ability to kind of, if a school closes, some wiggle room on some of those, so we wouldn't necessarily always be completely stuck with machines not working. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other discussion?
Questions? Were there multiple vendors looked at?
Yep, we have a company that went out to price, and we had 4 or 5 bids submitted. We did actually go with the lowest bid as well, yep, send that back.
Any other questions?
And is this a
Did all the bids require an interest-bearing lease? Is there any that?
So
You know,
we went,
yeah.
we went through a broker. We went through a broker, and they have specs. Do you want to talk about the specs or anything? But we went through a broker, and they put out, and they got the bids and shared them with us.
So the companies that put in bids put in the number of machines that we need, the service agreements that we need, but then it's up to us to say, okay, this is how much it costs, and we certainly can't finance, well, we need to finance that because we certainly can't cover that cost in one fiscal year. So that's why we're going out to lease, which is typical. Our previous lease was paid off 2 years ago. So in the last 2 years, we've had only the service agreement price that we've been paying. And so this is comprehensive, includes the lease for the machines themselves and also for the service agreement.
Yeah.
Chrissy, did you still have another question?
more? Yes. Is this is this a recommendation from the finance committee? Is this the one that you are bringing to us?
Yes, we narrowed it down to 2 that we kind of did the pros and cons on, and this was the least expensive as well option, and so this was the recommendation from the committee.
Okay.
Are you able to justify need for 60 machines? That's like 13 per building. I mean, especially like we were meeting in committee today. We didn't even print anything off because it was all in Google Docs. So I don't. And kids are using Chromebooks and what? That's just an enormous cost to me. I mean, I run a multi-million-dollar trucking company. We have 3 in the whole entire building. So 13 per building seems like a lot.
So we're actually reducing the number of machines that we currently have, going from 71 down to 60. And so what the company that went to bid for us does is they come in They look at our usage. They look at all the machines that we have, our photocopiers and our printers, our standalone printers. They look at the usage. They make a determination based on the number of copies and the number of prints that we're doing per year on what they think we need per building. And our IT department was thrilled with the work that you can correct me if I'm not speaking for you accurately, but they did a really thorough job of looking at what our usage is and what we need for machines, so we were able to reduce the number that we currently have down by 11.
Robbie?
So, Sam, we're talking about from the big standalone machine to the desktop, right? So everybody
Not-
doesn't have to all go to the same machine in the
Yeah.
same building to get copies?
Correct. So we're talking about printers
Right.
that might be in individual offices, and then we're talking about photocopiers. And previously, we've had these two on separate contracts. So the smaller printers have been on a separate contract from the photocopiers in years past. So this is also consolidating, bringing that together, having the same service provider, the same payment, and the same replacement schedule. So the number of machines, we're not replacing them on a staggered cycle because we want them to have the same lifespan and have the lease cycle come up again and replace with a similar structure once the machines have reached their lifespan.
Sam, are these colored printers?
It's not on.
It's not on.
Am I on?
No.
Okay. Some of the machines are color and some are black and white, like our current structure.
Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? 7.8, I hereby move that the board authorizes the superintendent to execute and deliver the tax-exempt lease with the MST Government Leasing LLC on such terms and conditions discussed and provided to the board, and to execute and deliver any such documents required to execute the contract with specialized purchasing consultants.
Motion. So seconded.
Any discussion?
What does that mean?
I'm not the only one.
I know this one.
I
Basically, the first vote, the last vote we just did was just to authorize the actual contract. This one is to allow the superintendent to actually act for that contract, to actually have the rights to do it, that kind of thing, right? Did I kind of say that right?
Authorize me to sign.
Any other discussion or questions? All right, seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay. 7.9, to approve the first reading of the following policies. We'll start off with BEDB-R, agenda format.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Scott?
Yeah, where did this new agenda format come from? Like, who drafted it? Or is this like a MSBA thing? Or?
Christy?
Yes, I can. So this was brought to us by our chair of the board as a consideration in terms of how to organize our meetings moving forward. And other people can jump in because it's been a long time since this whole process started. Laura.
Yeah, can I ask for clarification from the chair on the importance of bringing this forward for discussion?
Sure. So, for me, it meant a better clarification. It also kind of, we were seeing a lot of times where we added the board comments at the bottom of it, and it seemed like many of the board comments that were coming through were coming through as discussions for topics that we had already discussed in the meeting that weren't discussed at the time, or it also, some of the comments that were coming through were asking the superintendent to do something instead of doing it through a different atmosphere. I felt like the board member comments, that wasn't really what the aspect was for. It just felt like we were getting kind of blindsided sometimes with some of the comments that were coming through. And I felt like if we if you had a comment on an agenda item, that's where you're supposed to make your comment for. It wasn't made to just wait until the end of the meeting to have your comment. And then some of it was the consent to agenda. It's just kind of making it more of a formalized process. It also gives an update on your public participation. It also calls to that if we have an agenda adjustment that it's voted for. We hadn't really done that, so that is in there also now. It also gives the opportunity for our business manager to have a comment at every meeting if there's something that needs to be said. It also allows for me, if there's something that the board feels they should have announced, a kudos, a not whatever, it gives me the opportunity to give a summary or the announcement out instead of it being coming from separate members of the board. Scott?
Public participation versus comment. What could you explain the verbiage difference between public participation and public comment?
That one I'm not sure of. I didn't ask for that change. I just asked for the board member comment change. I think we're looking at this as being the standardization from what other boards are doing and calling it public participation instead of comment. That's all. It's just changing a word. Kathy?
There we go. There were times like when we had presentations from the community, like our Community Cares backpack program, as well as our Garden, where they weren't really making comments. They're not really, and necessarily, it was kind of like, should they be an agenda item or should they not? So this seems to be a better fit where they would be a participation where they can share their pieces and not necessarily be a separate agenda item.
Sorry, Bob.
I'm just letting him continue.
So, I mean, sometimes the board member comments were, positive in nature. I mean, is there anywhere in here where we have, does that fall under one of these categories, or?
It could be something that you send to me that could be announced as the board chair's report. We also got awards and recognitions. And there's some.
Because I just feel like, so just because I'm a member of the board or was elected to be on the board, doesn't necessarily mean I lose my ability to exercise my right to speech, as well as redress grievances with my government, this being a government body. And also, I mean, I am a taxpayer in this community as well as everybody else, so I feel like since my participation in that goes to fund this, I think that there should be the ability to voice my opinions should be made a required opportunity.
So I hear that and I understand that, but sometimes when that participation or those comments kind of negatively reflect too, it's hard on the staff and our administrators to come, and I'm not trying to take your freedom of speech away from you, not whatsoever. But if it's something that needs to be discussed because it's an agenda item, then it needs to be discussed during that time. Most of you, if you go back and you visit our board meetings, most of the time the board comments are because of something that we already had talked about in the agenda. It had nothing to do with something separate. The majority of them were because of their discussion. They wanted to have more discussion about something that was already discussed. So that's where I came from, and my feeling was, this is where your discussion needs to be, is during the agenda item.
I think it's New York Times versus Sullivan, where people that work for the public are subject to scrutiny. So, I mean, there's a Supreme Court case law already on that. So we definitely want to be treading really carefully about limiting the ability to what we say. So.
But if you have discussion on an agenda item, it should happen during the agenda item's discussion, not at your board member comments. And that's what has been typically practice has been happening.
I don't agree with this.
Bob?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't like consent agendas. That's something that's coming in from outside. We haven't had them. I think someone else can probably explain a consent agreement better than I can, but typically it is they post the agenda, they post the articles in the agenda, and they're automatically approved by consent. That way, they don't really come up and be dealt with individually as discussion items and stuff. I think that our current layout is fine. I like the board member comments. Over the many years that I've been on the board, I believe most of the comments have not been on an item that was on the agenda during the meeting. They were usually thanking people for something or recognizing the awards that one of our organizations might have won, or things of that nature, and not on the agenda items. I think if someone has something to say about an agenda item, then it should in fact be a board member, should be discussed under the agenda and not later. I think Robert's rules kind of talks about how often you can go and speak on a particular agenda item. It's usually twice, and that's it. And so if you want to try and stall it off to comments, then that's not the appropriate purpose of board member comments. They're outside the agenda items. But I like our current layout as it is. I think it gives our reports up front, allows the public to go and make comments and not participation. If participation, when we had those presentations were actually listed on the agenda under other reports, I think is where they may have been, so that they were agenda items. Otherwise, if it's just participation, you're opening up for the backpack program just to come under the public comment, and just make their presentation. And that's not how that should be incorporated. Statute talks about allowing the public to make comments. It's not a back and forth. If someone's making a presentation, you would expect it to be a back and forth with the board, and that's not allowed under comments. It's a one-way. Make your comments. Board chairs, thank you for your comments, and then we go on to the next one. So I think the agenda as we have it works fine. As board members, we all should be aware of it and follow it. I think my experience, most, if not all the time, it is. And I don't agree with everybody's position on every item. And I know people don't all agree with my position on every item. But we discuss that under the agenda item. And then comments come up is not the time to go and say, well, Bob, I didn't agree with what you were saying, and I think we should revisit this. That's not the time. So I'm not in favor of this agenda adjustment.
So for me, in the last year or so, it has been happening that way, where we wait till board member comments and we talk about agenda items. So that's been very difficult to do. And I'm not trying to stifle your First Amendment. I'm just trying to get you to realize to take that discussion and move it into our discussion block. So that's where, as far as the consent agenda, that was all the committee. So, Christy?
Yeah, two things. I think the idea of utilizing awards and recognitions as an agenda item would actually be a very positive thing, because the function of board comment is to do just that. And a lot of times it doesn't necessarily get reflected in the minutes in that way. So if we were to add an awards and recognition and have a procedure where we did ahead of time give Jill, like, hey, I'd like to recognize the Oak Hill Middle School staff for X, Y, and Z, and then Jill reports out on that, I think it would become more official in the minutes. I think it gets kind of caught up at the end and it doesn't necessarily get recognized. I can speak in terms of the consent agenda. We have actually been utilizing a consent agenda with our resignations and retirements anyway. They never get announced.
That's a very recent change. They used to always be announced.
So in the last 2 years.
2 years. We just skip over them for some reason under the superintendent's report.
I think appointments, they naturally become part of new business. So I'm not sure that appointments would be part of a consent agenda. And in terms of the public participation, I think I would like to see public comment, and then special presentations would be public But other than that, I'm in favor of this new agenda layout. I think it will help streamline things and help give process, and essentially make our meetings a little more effective.
I guess I'm personally kind of in the middle. I'm definitely all for more public participation. Last time this kind of thing came up a little bit, I actually wanted a pre and post public comment time, because I think that I'm hoping to encourage more people to come, because sometimes they don't know what's on the agenda, or they're not aware, or something came up during the agenda that they want to reply to. So I would like a post public comment section, and the participation. I understand that part of it. I agree with the comments with that. I guess for me, a big sticking point too is the removing the board member comments altogether. I understand that we need to use it for, and we try to use it for awards and recognitions. There are times that there have been times where I felt that we have gone through agenda items, and it just sometimes they get kind of moved through because maybe there is too much discussion, which I think is important as we're going through, and they kind of just get moved through. For good or for bad, everybody has a voice that's trying to be heard here and some sort of input. And I know we're trying to limit any kind of negative repercussion, because, I mean, we have professionals in the audience, and we don't want to make them be concerned or that kind of thing. But I know for me that having at least some point of the session where if there's something that came up that wasn't in the agenda, it would be good to be able to have a comment time for that, because otherwise, if we remove this, this is very rote. It becomes very almost too systemic, and you kind of lose any input really other than these very concrete agenda items that come up. And I feel like the fluidity of what could be an otherwise, meeting of the minds of a board gets kind of lost with that. And I know for good or for bad, you got to sometimes deal with the negative that could happen with it to be able to allow for the positive to have a chance to bloom too. Yes, so I'm kind of with Bob. I like the older format myself.
Okay, so I'd like to say a comment on this. Because there's a lot of perspectives here on this. A lot of perspectives. And I would say a lot of boards don't have board comments for a reason, which is liability. And so I think when I first started, it was all very positive. Thank you to the teacher. But when you allow positive, you have to allow negative. And I think some of the times it's not going through the proper channels of chain of command when there are things that come up that should have gone through a certain chain of command has happened. And yes, there's comments after about an agenda item. Remember, in our board training, as a board, you do board business. So I think if you keep board comments, I think there should be, and Jill and I can talk about this, an agenda item to define board comments. So there's guidelines on board comments, purposes of the board comments, because it isn't you as an individual. You serve as an individual on a board, and I don't know how this would work, but if you wanted to comment as a citizen and not as a board member, I guess you'd go up to public comment and make your comment as a citizen. But when you're commenting as a board member, you're in essence speaking for the board. So I think it's a fine line around why don't most school boards have this on it, is because if you say something that can then have a repercussion. So I'm just saying, I think it started off a certain way and then it evolved, and when it evolves, then it has to be re-looked at and talked about, and that's okay too. So just wanted to add that.
You can go
You
first.
both came at the same time, so Nicole.
Thanks. I actually had it up before then just waited.
Sorry.
I didn't see you.
No, I mean like before everybody else went, but I took a step back and waited in line. Excuse me. So I have some concerns, same concerns as my fellow board members, and there's some things too that I'm okay with. You know, I'm not a fan of the consent agenda, and I'm also not a fan of changing it to public participation. Although I understand where we're coming from on that. And I also don't think that removing board member comments is the answer. If we're supposed to be following Robert's Rules of Order, then if something comes up during that time frame, I feel like we're very lackadaisical when it comes to following those, and then we try to implement them here and there, and we're not consistent. So if we're consistent in what we're supposed to be following, and that is a policy, then we can solve any challenges with the board member comments with that. I will also say that I remember the lawyer who did give us the presentation also said you should follow Robert's Rules of Order, but don't use it to stifle or to stop any sort of great discussion or things like that. I mean, I don't remember his exact words, but it kind of stuck with me because I feel like that even in the towns, there's a lot of focus on that process, but it's not consistently followed. But when you have your attorney saying you don't necessarily have to consistently follow it, right? That's gray. That's not good guidance, right? We either follow it or we don't. So by removing something to get compliance with something that's already in place I don't think is the answer. And the only question I had, I don't think anybody else brought up, is if we remove executive session, how does that work when we need executive
I don't
session?
think executive session was originally on this notes on the agenda format. The original policy, I don't think it was on here.
It just gets added.
It just gets added
as needed.
As needed.
As needed.
I don't think it was originally on there.
Well, it's crossed out. It was number 9 and it's crossed out, so.
I think because they took an agenda.
You're right, it is crossed out.
It might have been.
It's not meant to be crossed out. I'm pretty positive it's not meant to be crossed out, but it is crossed out.
And I do agree with the two-third vote when there is an agenda adjustment. I feel like that's kind of like really, really fast at the beginning of a meeting. And you know, a lot of the times too, we get bombarded with data and information and presentations and reports that we have to digest them too. So we may not be prepared. I mean, others ask for, lead time. Well, I need lead time too to even understand what I just heard. Or, I mean, there are some presentations going on tonight and I'm looking, I'm reading, I'm trying to go back and forth because I didn't get those presentations otherwise, which we have asked to receive ahead of time. So
Which presentations are you talking about?
all the directors ones. I mean, we are bombarded with information and things going on, and it's hard to keep track and follow along and not miss it. I mean, they go fast, and I'm trying to focus, and I'm trying to watch, and I'm trying to read, and I've just had a whole 10-hour workday, and I'm gonna have to work again tonight, and my brain's already struggling. So if you guys want a lead time with what we might bring up, I think that we deserve the same when presentations or data is coming at us, because it's hard to formulate what we want to say about them at that point in time. But also tonight, there was no discussion offered. But again, 2 people spoke during certain times. No point of order was called. We didn't follow Robert's Rules of Order. So we either need to follow it or we don't.
What's Robert's Rules of Order pertains to that issue? We didn't follow it, you must know what it is.
I'm asking. Like, what? Jill was the one who said I'll allow it, but there was no offer to the discussion to the board.
Well,
so
some
is
people
it?
did
So
offer
is it
to
or
raise
is it not?
questions.
Is it rules of order or is it not?
It doesn't particularly follow the rules of order. You're having presentations, and if someone wants to ask a question, it's usually they can, right? Where there have been times where we've been asked to wait until everybody is presented and then
Mhm.
ask questions.
Yep.
That was a request from the chair before they started. That
Yep.
request wasn't made tonight, so
Yep.
that allowed for questions to be asked.
I
One-
think that's been a standing thing though lately is that people give presentations and you're not allowed to ask questions was my,
Yeah.
it
I didn't
sounds like
think I was
that
allowed to.
similar too. Not that I
Yeah.
had any questions to ask either, but.
It was nice to hear the offer for questions. Well, so you preface public comment with a little, blurb about, not refraining from using names and that sort of thing. Perhaps it would be useful to do the same thing with board member comments and preface that with, because it's really not meant to be a back and forth. And oftentimes it did turn into, a kind of a back and forth and people jumping in on that comment, but it should just be a one-way, just like public comment. So if there's a way, I would just stick with the current agenda and just, as the chair, preface board member comments in a similar way you do public comment. And lastly, the flow of our current agenda, I feel, is a little better than this because old business, new business is right in the middle. And I kind of like how we go through all the reports and this, that, and the other thing, and then we kind of get into the lengthy, meaty discussion stuff, the board's actual work at the end. That way, people here that are here to give reports or presentations, they can take off and they're not stuck here until 9 o'clock at night before they're giving a report. This sticks the old business, new business right in the middle of that. That's all.
Thank you. I had thought about that suggestion before. So. Anything else, Christine? So this is. What do you want to do with this?
So we have a motion on the floor.
Mhm.
So I think we need to vote to see if folks want this one to pass. If they don't, then we stay with the current agenda unless it's the will of the board to bring it back to the policy as a new agenda item, which will not be visited until next school year. So that would be the process.
So we've had our discussion. Any other discussion? Okay, so then I will call for the vote. All those in favor? We do Scott's suggestion. I'm good with that.
Well, do we want to, I can rescind my motion.
No,
Okay.
it's all
All
right.
right.
You vote it down.
Right.
We vote
Just
it
keep
down.
going.
It's okay. Just keep going. Yep. So, all those not in favor?
So we revert back to our
the
previous
original.
agenda.
Yep.
Can you add to that what Scott just said about board comments? Like making that,
No.
you can't.
What if I want to recognize the outstanding work of teacher X? I want to use their name.
You give it to the board chair for awards and recognition.
Well, we don't have awards already.
So we'll move on to IMB, teaching about controversial sensitive issues.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and discussion.
So this is brought to you by your policy committee. It has come back to us a couple of times. This is our recommendation for this new policy to be accepted.
Nicole? We
Our-
did make the motion. Yes, we did. Yep, no, we did. Go ahead.
Are all of these changes, these edits, the revisions proposed, the same ones that we reviewed the first time, or are there different ones?
So this got sent back from the board back to the policy committee. We have met and reviewed it and are bringing this back to you. There were edits that were made.
Okay, I thought that there was different changes than what I initially reviewed. And I did have one particular question. I mean, I have a lot of questions, but is this still first reading? Okay. I'm sorry, I just had to check myself. There is an addition, sorry, in the cross-reference section, IMBAA, Alternatives to Biological Dissection.
Hang on, Nicole, we're on policy IMB.
Oh,
IMB.
We
sorry.
haven't gone to that one yet.
Wrong order. I am sorry, wrong
okay.
order. So this is the new policy.
Yes.
So, but it was our, but it's still the first reading because we asked you to take it back.
Correct.
So, but we
get tabled.
Okay. I was-
It
Okay,
got
I was like, I
tabled
don't remember
during-
talking about this one.
It got tabled during the meeting that we were all Zoom and people were having
Yes.
connectivity issues.
Yes.
Then it got tabled again because
Okay.
it was late and budget.
Thank you for refreshing my memory because it did say new policy and then I was confused by what you said. Doesn't take much though. So I have concerns with using the word should in policies. Should is very gray. It leads subjectivity open to whether it's required, necessary, must, or you don't really have to do it. I just circled it in A1, 2, and 3. And it's not necessarily like for number 1, I think that it's not necessarily the A1 a huge ordeal, but because there's definitions and other things that you could point to. But A2 and 3 are a little bit more of a deal breaker for me. So the study should be emphasized in the high school. Well, should means they can still have it in middle school or elementary, pre-K, what have you. Limiting it to the high school, or even if we think about higher level grades of middle school, your typical junior high of 7th and 8th. I just have I don't like that word should. And then the study should be objective. Which is kind of ironic because the word should is subjective, so that doesn't really flow for me. But I also have questions about C. I've read it a few times, that sentence, and I'm just not comprehending what that's trying to tell me. The teacher employs the same methods in handling controversial issues as characterize the best teaching at any time. I don't know if there's a tense issue or a word missing. I'm not quite sure.
Yep, as.
And characterized as, maybe? I'm not sure. I didn't want to assume.
Do you have, for A, 2, and 3, do you have recommendations on what the word should be?
Right. I deal with that all the time. Like, how do I express this by saying should but not saying should? I think the study, I can come up with them, or I can give you something soon, like, tomorrow.
May. Shall. Must.
Shall. So shall is the other side of the spectrum. Shall gives you no wiggle room, and you can't pull in 7th or 8th.
Right.
So because of the way we have the school set up, you can't do middle school either, because I don't want to bring in 5th and 6th sometimes, right? So I can come up with something.
You have to have it for the first reading.
We have to do it now.
Well,
Do you want to go grade 7 and 8 instead of high school? Grade 7 through 12?
I think 7th through 12th, if, junior high.
The study
Like.
will be emphasized in grades 7, 8 in high school.
Yes.
Ought.
Or, yes.
Ought.
Why not just make it shall? I mean, Because,
could.
because it's a policy, and
It's a
you
policy.
should not have gray area because then it can be disputed.
Exactly. It leaves room to interpretation.
You go 7 through 12 with a shall.
Yes.
then
What
that-
does a gray level have to do with it?
Well,
I'm just curious.
someone to introduce some topic, probably the third graders.
So I was
Are not able to go and start doing that.
right.
What it's really aimed at is critical thinking.
I was thinking like I think we have gifted and talented in 7th and 8th, and you don't want to limit them or exclude them. Or we can just say shall be high school. I mean, I'm fine with that too. I just definitely want to make sure that the should is not opening up our 6th and younger to certain subjects that, again, is subjectively determined by a teacher. So there's just a lot of subjectivity with this policy.
So
and
I just want to make sure that we're capturing the right edits. So,
Mhm.
A, it's the responsibility of the schools to make provisions for the study of controversial issues. A1, the policy on controversial issues shall be defined in terms of the rights of students rather than in the terms of the rights of teachers. Is that the edit that we are making?
yes, I would. That's my recommendation.
Or do you want to say must?
Shall and must typically carry the same connotation in a policy. I don't know that I have a preference.
And then the study shall be emphasized in the high school when most students are mature enough to study the significant controversial issues facing our society.
Mm-hmm.
So changing should to shall there
Yep.
is the recommendation. And then the study shall be objective and scholarly with a minimum emphasis on opinion and a maximum emphasis on the facts and critical thinking.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Then to go back, I see your hand, Scott, but hang on, because Nicole is still.
Yep.
So
Thank you.
under C, what is? There's a word, right, that's missing. Can we make sure that we change that and add that to?
I think it might be a tense and a word. Characterized as the best teaching at any time.
The teacher employs the same methods in handling controversial issues as characterized by
Or but yeah. Mm-hmm.
the best teaching. Should it be the best teaching methods? Say that again, Katie.
Teacher employs the same methods in handling controversial issues as characterized by the best teaching
I think it should be the teacher employs handling controversial issues as characterized as the best teaching methods at any time. Does that sound right?
Nicole, did you have any others?
I do.
Sorry, I'll get you, Scott. Hang on.
Sorry.
She's still.
In C1, I was curious as to how the teacher in selecting both the content and the method impacts IJJ policy that is already out there regarding selection of instruction, but IJJ was not included as a cross-reference. So to me, I think that would have to be an addition in the cross-reference section.
So add IJJ.
Yes. And then C2, the teacher has assured him herself that the controversial subject to be discussed belongs within the framework of the curriculum. I know our teachers are professionals, and they are the trusted, qualified educators, but I don't know that I'm comfortable putting that in a policy. Maybe, assured director of curriculum, or, or follow the standard policy for instruction and content selection. rather than being just assuring yourself.
If we remove the him, herself, that, so the teacher has assured the controversial subject to be discussed belongs within the framework of the curriculum.
Yes.
Does that change it?
Yes.
So do we want to remove that person
Yes,
language?
yes.
Okay.
In C4, I don't know how to get around this, but the first sentence says it's not to be used as a personal forum, and then the last sentence says that they can, the teacher also has their right to identify and express their own point of view, as long as they indicate that it is his or her own. I don't know how we would police that under a policy, that it's limiting it to just their current right and opinion expression versus actually making it a personal forum. So I don't like number 4. I don't, I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough one. And it's going to be hard to police even with a policy in place or enforce or, to confirm that they're following it. And I had one more in C5. So it says the teacher emphasizes keeping an open mind, basing one judgment on known facts, looking closely at the facts, and being ready to change one's opinion should new facts come into light. So I don't think any teacher or any citizen or any person should ever be looking to change one's opinion, but looking to, provide different perspectives and viewpoints to allow that person to reevaluate their own opinion. So I don't think changing one's opinion is ever anything anybody can do. So
Did we change the word from change to understand? Being ready to understand one's opinion?
It shouldn't. I mean, it's still.
Because this is around teaching practice. So under C, the teacher employs handling controversial issues as characterized by best teaching methods at any time. So what this policy is providing is basically creating a culture in the classroom where your opinion can change.
What if you just put a period after discussion?
Instead, and get rid of, and
Yeah.
Omit and being ready to change one opinion should new facts come into light? Is that what the suggestion is?
So I would say that, or being ready to understand or challenge.
I think if you
one's
just get rid
opinion.
of it, so a teacher emphasizes keeping an open mind based on judgment of known facts, looking closely at facts to evaluate them in terms of the subject
true.
under discussion, period.
Yeah, that's true. It's a little redundant there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good with that. And that is all. Thank you.
What do we want to do about 4?
Oh, 4. Shoot. Yeah.
Could you just end it at the period of the first sentence and leave it like that?
The teacher does not
I
use
like
the
where you're
classroom as a
going.
personal forum, period.
Good.
And get rid of the rest?
So yes, I would say yes, but yes, I think it's covered. Their right to their own opinions and to be able to express those are covered in the fact that they are the qualified teacher, and that it doesn't have to be put into policy. So we're not saying that they can't, just not a personal forum. Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you for all those feedback.
Scott?
Yeah. I think that it's obvious we need to send this thing back, so vote no, because it needs a lot of work. And also, this is a good example of why we can't take policy at face value just because it comes to us from MSBA or the law firm. Like, there's a lot of holes in this one. A lot of holes. Most of this is just crazy to me, but I also went through line by line, but section A1, the policy on controversial issues should be defined in terms of the rights of the students rather than in terms of rights of the teacher. So rights of students rather than rights of teachers. Forcing a teacher to teach a controversial issue that they may not agree with, I kind of have an issue with that. And that's what may come of it if your policy states that it's defined in the terms of the rights of the students versus the rights of the teacher. We wonder why educators are leaving this profession. Policies like this did not create a school full of teachers with diverse ideologies. So that one, A1, I don't know if it should be, why is it only around the students? I think teachers should be allowed to have their own ideas as well. Anyway, A2, the study should be emphasized in the school when most students are mature enough to study significant controversial issues. But who determines maturity level? I mean, we're seeing more controversial things being taught down to 5th grade. There was 2 years ago, there was a very controversial lesson that happened in 5th grade. So who determines this? There's no oversight whatsoever in this. And that kind of brings me to section B too, the study of controversial issues. The students have, there's no opt-out option in any of this. It lists the students' rights. They have the right to learn about this. They have the right to access information, express opinions, yada, yada. But nowhere does it say they have the right not to participate in these controversial discussions or lessons. It's not even in here.
So in terms of oversight, I think our oversight is through our curriculum coordinator and main learning results and other pieces that govern what is taught in our schools.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I know, like, as an example, there was a video shown in the high school that a parent was super concerned with because their student felt very uncomfortable, and when asked that question, the teacher has full ability just to do what they need to do, choose the materials they want to use for that class. There wasn't oversight. So when we're speaking specifically with I'm not talking about your basic academics, but when you're talking about controversial issues, there should be sort of a checks and balances system. Like before you enter into this lesson, there should be, okay, these are the materials, these are what we discuss. Who do you discuss that with, and where is there a checks and balance system for that? There isn't one.
I'm assuming, and I'm not in schools every day, but Katie and Kathy, I would imagine, with team leaders, building administrators, curriculum coordinators, stuff is approved. It's not just, yes, there is some ability, autonomy to choose your materials, but I don't think I'm comfortable with saying that it's willy-nilly and teachers can use whatever they want. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting nods at no. So
You explained that well, Christy.
Thanks. And students
sure,
can opt out at
I
any
feel
time.
like it should be listed under the students have the following rights. There's not listed that they have the right to opt out or not participate. Anyway.
There was like a B5.
I think what you're getting at, Scott, though, is a student in the middle class saying, I'm opting out.
Sure. Hey, you know what? If the discussion starts going down a path you feel uncomfortable with, why should you be forced to sit there and continue to participate?
Okay.
You should be able to.
So, but what I'm saying is this policy lays out, and it's a new policy. We have not had this policy. So this would be a policy teachers are going to be reading and discuss. We have not had this policy. So this will be a discussion with staff around this policy. So this is brand new. And now, Kathy, correct me, is this a required policy, or they could choose not to have this policy? Okay. Correct. Right. So you have to weigh out, do you want this policy? Do you not want this policy? You know, so I think you're right. And I think we've had IMBB.
Yes.
I think
Right.
we need something similar, but this is
Well,
mostly
we have to make
garbage. This is mostly garbage.
Yeah, IMBB is required. IMB is not.
Yeah.
Correct. So we have always had IMBB, but IMB came up because of our situation this past fall. And we had nothing to reference of how to handle the situation.
Any other discussion?
And C1 is the same thing. Content, method of instruction, mindful of the maturity level of students. Again, there's no prior approval before presenting controversial material to students. So I have a problem with C1 as well.
So can I just ask you a question on the B with the right to study any controversial issue? So the right to study or not study?
Well, I was going to say that too. Section B, the study of controversial issues. The students have the following rights. But you should add a fifth item, something like the right to opt out of the lesson or discussion of controversial content. No student should be forced into subjects that make them feel uncomfortable or don't align with their values or beliefs. I mean, this is basic stuff. This is in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution where, you know, due process and parents' rights.
So is that a recommendation? Are you asking to add a reference to the opt-out IMBB?
And then option 5.
Under option 5.
To opt
Yeah,
out.
but it-
Yeah.
B5?
Yes, and also,
And how do you want it worded?
well, I mean, it should just reference the IMBB, but I kind of like it more in under the section B where it says the rights just listed as a right.
Yes. How do you want it
option
listed?
5,
Sorry.
You just said it. Say what you just said.
The right to opt out.
Yeah, I'm just lost my. Oh, the right to opt out of the lesson or discussion of controversial content.
I'm just going to say that this is going to have to be worked out.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of work to do on this.
No,
one.
I'm just
Sure.
saying, I think we have to be mindful when we make those kind of, I think when you said make reference to IMBB, that's one thing. To say anyone has a right to opt out of anything they don't value or believe could open, the high school would have to have a major discussion on students saying, because we know, not that this always happens, but, you know,
This
I don't
covers
want to study this
controversial
today.
issues.
I'm
Not-
walking out.
I'm not opting out of algebra. I'm opting out of a controversial
No,
sensitive
but that's all defined in everyone's personal viewpoint.
Correct, which
So
is
what
parental
you might
rights.
find, what I'm saying is in a classroom, when a teacher is teaching social studies or teaching health or teaching anything, there has to be a process, not just I'm uncomfortable with what you're discussing, I'm leaving class. So I think that's why we have IMBB. So referencing, if you would like, a student has a right to have consideration of exemption from required instruction, policy IMBB is referencing another policy folks can use to be exempt from instruction. But to put a blanket statement like that, I just think we have to be mindful. Policies are very serious, like you said, Scott. It's not, they go through a lot of work, and I know you don't always agree with it, but it comes through trials and case studies and so forth of how they're written a certain way. So that's how I'm putting out there.
So 5, student has the right to exemption of instruction, see policy IMBB.
Something like that.
B5.
And you're referring to the policy.
Yep, that's already in place.
Well, I mean, do you really need to refer so the recommendation, the first recommendation was on the B5 to opt out of the right to opt out of, like, I don't understand why you would reference it again when it's already cross-referenced at the bottom, but.
Sure, just add it as a right.
I think Scott's asking for it to be explicit under B. So referring to the policy in B instead of just having it as a cross-reference at the bottom.
And so what was the wording? Sorry.
Students have the right to exemption of instruction, see policy IMBB.
I don't agree with that change if you're doing first writings. I'm not willing to give the student a right to determine what class they want to sit in and go through. If they find that whatever it is objectionable to them, then they should be allowed to go and leave the classroom and then talk with their parent or guardian, who can then implement an option, because they have to somehow get their studies in, and the other policy allows the parent and guardian to work with administration to come up with a alternate project that can go and get them what they need for knowledge-wise, and just in a different way. So for a student to be able to say, I object, and just walk out and not attend that class anymore for a while, so I don't think that's a student's right at all. Students are minors. Their rights are limited.
Yeah, but their parents' rights are not limited. And I mean, you're talking the hierarchy.
the
You got
parent
Constitution, law, and policy, which is at the very bottom. And this policy could potentially come into some really sketchy waters of violations of parental rights. But we could circumvent all of this by having a whole lot more transparency and addressing controversial issues ahead of time with parents, which is not happening. If we had that happening, we wouldn't even need this policy, because you could address controversial issues before, go through the process of submitting your form and through the IMBB, and it would be done.
Did you have any more?
Yes, I do. It was the same thing as Nicole said, the C1 item, which was the maturity level of instruction. Actually, sorry, C4 is the personal forum, which I don't agree with either. I know you're supposed to be like sort of transparent about what your personal beliefs are, this, that, and the other thing, but my problem is that kids look up to their teachers. They look up to people that are in the schools as being like, what they say is factual, and so that could be misconstrued.
So the suggestion was for C4 to just read, the teacher does not use the classroom as a personal forum, and then omit the rest.
Yeah. But I guess there's a time and place for personal views, but I'm concerned about creating a bias. So.
Is there anything else, Scott?
Well, I guess I already kind of touched on it, but I think that this policy would be better suited if there was something that focused more on transparency and getting this information out to families, guardians, parents beforehand. I mean, you really need to just bridge the gap here. So, there's nothing in here that relates to having to do that.
So I'm chiming in a little bit because we're supposed to discuss during agenda items. So, to throw my couple of cents in, as a former biology teacher, I mean, on the flip end of this, and I think it's an important point to bring up, is, I mean, in the 2000s, evolution was a controversial topic.
Mm-hmm.
And there were many teachers that actually lost their jobs teaching that. And it's pretty, I mean, we have modern medicine that's based on evolution as a working theory. I mean, so I guess I'm always, I tend to get a little skeptic when we want to start getting into controversial topics, because there's good and I won't even qualify it as a good or bad. There are controversial topics that people can handle and others that people can't. But either way, topics are topics. And I think having the school be policing or avoiding, I think avoiding a topic is never, ever something that I think is going to work through it. I know that my children are exposed to plenty of things out in the public that are controversial. And My remedy isn't to have the school try to teach them about it. We discuss it as a family, no matter what they see. I mean, there really isn't anything that the school's going to expose them to that my kids haven't probably seen in using the public restroom or being out in public, going into an inner city. They were exposed to homeless people just the other day in Portland. That was an interesting family discussion. They were kind of shocked. I mean, at first they thought it was a joke when they saw somebody sleeping on the stairs. Point being is I don't think it's personally that it's the school board's responsibility to allow everybody to get out of a controversial topic because they're uncomfortable. Again, there were people that were uncomfortable with evolution because they thought that it infringed on their religious beliefs, but it really, you can be religious and believe in evolution at the same time. I think that as a world and a society, the only way mankind's moving forward is by confronting controversial issues head on and addressing them and being able to have some way to discuss them, especially if you're uncomfortable. So that's where I kind of stand with it. I think I support how it was written, just to throw that out there.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Yeah, I think getting into the weeds about what is controversial and sensitive subjects, issues, are completely inappropriate, because what may be controversial and sensitive issue for me isn't what it is for somebody else. Mm-hmm. So right off the bat, you're setting yourself up for somebody going into because we're not talking about a math class. Basically, we're not talking, we're talking about social studies. We're talking about health class. You know what I mean? So consequently, if my students learning about Rosa Parks having to sit in the back of the bus and standing up for herself and not doing that and getting arrested, to some people that's controversial. And they're going to complain about it, and they don't want that. We're hearing about people wanting to take books out of libraries and all that. So by stifling our staff, and I think that's exactly what we're going to try and do by getting all these things in weeds, I think parents should be able to work with the administrators and the teachers, and if they really don't want their students learning about something, I think probably that's up to the parents. But then again, I feel that you shouldn't just be able to get up and say, well, I don't like this subject, I'm going to leave, if you're a student. But I think if you're teaching and you're going to be teaching about a controversial or sensitive issue, getting that information out beforehand, like Scott said, is a big plus. And if that person says, hey, I think we should come up with a different game plan for my student, I don't want my student learning about that, that's should be up to the parent. So I think what we need to do is leave it as broad as possible, but still be able to work inside the parameters of the policy, because this is a new policy, right, Katie? Mm-hmm. And allow our teachers to have enough wiggle room and movement so they can talk about subjects that are controversial and sensitive issues, because I think that discussion is important. And if you don't want your student learning about it, I want my student learning about it. My student learned about it, health class, social studies, and all that. But if you got people that don't think the world is round to this day. Mm-hmm. So to them, that could be a controversial issue. So I think what we need to do is try and get a policy that stays broad enough that we can still teach these issues, but narrow enough to give parents the option to sit down with administrators and come up with a different plan if they think that's appropriate for their student.
Yeah, I read through it a couple of times. I didn't have any problem with the way it was presented initially. I think that there's been some good comments about maybe we need to implement some way so that if one of our instructors is planning to work on something that they think might be controversial, that they send out to the parents and let them know that it's coming. There's no harm in that. If the parents don't read their notification and then come in and complain, well, we know that's going to happen, but at least they will be notified and they'll have the option. So I think perhaps something where in this policy we would put down something and put some onus on our instructors that if they believe it's going to be controversial, they should send a blast out to the parents, legal guardians of the students involved in the class so that they can be aware of it and then they can look into it. But I don't really want to restrict it any more than what it is. I've been around for a number of years. I know that the flow of electricity has changed direction. Used to go negative to positive, and the old ions went here and there, and now all of a sudden it was going through holes in between. So things have changed, and opinions change. I grew up in a part of the country where not everybody was treated equally, and my military experience, I've really exchanged my opinion on the differences in how much we're alike, and it doesn't matter the color of the skin or nationality. And so my opinion there changed drastically from high school to 6 years later. So we have to expose students. You know, if the world stayed the same, we didn't change, we'd still be going around in rowboats, you know, and fighting wars with spears. So, you know, it's not an evolution that we're fighting with bullets and bombs, but it's not spears.
So there is a motion for this policy. I also heard suggestion of some sort of procedure, potentially, which would be a different agenda item than what we're discussing right now. Some sort of procedure of how to notify parents that we could certainly ask the policy committee to look at, or maybe it already exists.
Well, I think then you're getting into micromanaging. So, because the teachers put out their syllabus, they put out their information, and what one person may think is controversial, somebody else may not. So it would force us to have to determine what, I think your idea, Rosa Parks, is that a controversial that we need to say we're going to be teaching that? So we always can work on getting better, and when things are brought forward, we make adjustments. So I guess a procedure then puts it in policy, and then it's going to be, well, you didn't say that. That to me is controversial. When, you know, I think this got brought forward. This is what's recommended. There were some tweaks of shall or, you know, some that, fine. But when you start doing, you're going to do a procedure, what does that procedure look like? And then different grade levels, and then you're getting into, you know, micromanaging. That's my opinion.
So the motion is on the floor is for the first reading. So we could send it back for the second reading with the adjustments that Nicole and Christy have talked about, adding the shall, referencing the policies, and changing the characterized and methods, eliminating some of the wording in some of the other policies.
Yes.
So all those in favor of moving forward with these changes to second reading, raise your hand, please. All those not in favor. Thank you. We'll move down to IMBB, exemption from required instruction.
So moved.
Second.
And discussion. Yeah. Now this is the right policy, Nicole.
This is the one.
I didn't want to steal the floor. I'm a compliance officer, sorry. So I review policies, procedures, and laws all the time. This is where we have the new policy referenced in the cross-reference section, IMBAA. And I'm not sure how I can review a policy with that as a cross-reference without having that policy. Yeah.
They're all posted.
They're all posted online.
It's not in our list. IMBAA.
Isn't one of our policies listed?
It's
That's a bad cross-reference.
it's not on alternatives to biology. Sorry, thank you. Biological dissection. I don't even know what that policy might even include for content.
Just like virtual labs. Again, as a science teacher, instead of doing an actual biological sample, you'd have like a virtual lab. They had virtual frog dissections.
Instead of it being alive.
I refused to take that in high school.
Yeah.
That makes sense now. Yeah, I chose not to sign up for the frog dissection class. I still need to see the policy though, but that makes sense. Thanks, Doug.
It's not. I don't see it.
It's not on our website.
You probably don't have it, so you probably should take it off. Yeah. We'll check to see if it's just not listed. Didn't get listed. Yeah. We'll check it.
And not to stir the pot more, but this is the IMBB that we talked about a lot in the last go around, right? This says the superintendent's decision is final. So I also, so we also have IJJ, which is where it can end up coming to the board, right? So that is cross-referenced. But it's really not final then, if there's a cross-reference to IJJ. And I know it said that before. That was one of the things I've actually identified previously, just looking at through these policies. If it's final, then you cross-reference a procedure, a policy that we have that new form for, that we never had, even though our policy mentioned it, where they can end up coming in front of the board. It's still the parents' rights, and it's the parents' choice to follow that. So I just think it's a little contradictory to say that the superintendent is final, but oh wait, you do have another avenue. So
you're doing the overall curriculum and
So I thought IJJ was still where a parent can get their child out. Okay, then I don't agree with this at all.
IJJ is the instructional library media material selection. So that's the process that parents can come if they don't.
Like if they want a book removed.
Right. But if they want to exempt their student, that's Katie's decision. We do not want to get in the weeds of that.
No, we don't, but it's not Katie's decision either. It's the parents' decision, so I disagree with that.
Well, remember, it's appeals process.
It's a process.
It's
not-
working with the teacher. It's like chain of command. Goes teacher, principal, superintendent.
Yeah, but
for this.
Yeah, but the superintendent doesn't have the final say over a student. I think that's.
Can I ask you how many the principals have gotten and how many you've gotten?
None.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, but it could come to that, right? And I see Nicole's point. It's like, I'm sorry, but like I don't co-parent with the school district, so if I am very adamant about my kid learning about something, I'm sorry, but they're just going to skip that school day because that's not happening. Not under my watch.
This is, remember that if you read it through, the other one, JJ, that's the curriculum itself,
Yeah.
right? Right. This one is exemption. you would hope that at the school level it wouldn't get to me because they've worked out a plan, they've discussed how they're going to get the required, if it's part of the required curriculum, it would come to me to have a resolution on how we're going to work together as the parents, the administration, and the teacher.
Yeah, I just don't think that this is now the answer for IMB that we just talked about, because it actually is not leaving the rights of that student's learning in the parents' hands.
So I read it differently. So controversial issue. I hate broccoli. I can't do anything with broccoli, and it's just for the sake of discussion. So pretend I'm a kid. My parent meets with the school principal and says, okay, Christy hates broccoli. There's 4 courses on broccoli. What kind of project can she do to make sure that she's learning about something in the same line of what we're learning and demonstrate her learning? My mom says, no, I don't like that. So then she comes and meets with Katie and says, Katie, I don't like what they proposed. She doesn't like Brussels sprouts either. What can we figure out together? And ultimately, Katie and the parent work together to figure out an alternative way for this kid to meet their learning results. That's what this policy says.
Right, but if you're going to use this policy to address IMB, the controversial issue policy, I think you're missing something. I think we're missing something. We're not relying, we're not giving the parent the right that they have, that we should not be trying to take. So everybody just said, you have IMBB, you have IMBB. But IMBB, now you're saying is not going to solve it.
I'm having a hard time understanding, I guess. So as a parent, you have a right to say, okay, this isn't aligning with my kid. I'm going to pull them from the district. Everybody, Katie doesn't have the right to say, no, you can't do that. You have the right as a parent to say, I'm not going to allow my kid to take biology. I don't believe in evolution. That's not something we practice as a family. And you could figure out a different way. Neither of these policies are infringing upon those things.
So all I'm saying is if IMBB was the answer to parents' concerns with IMB, that's not the answer if the final decision is on the superintendent, is with the superintendent. Oh, bless you.
Bless you. I don't see it that way. I can't understand it. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time following.
I don't understand.
And hands up.
You got lots of hands.
Laura. I'm trying to understand what you're trying to say. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm taking my moment to digest for a second. Sorry, Laura.
No, we have to finish, or can I?
I thought she was still going, so I wasn't sure. No.
Okay.
No, I'm done.
Laura.
Can you just help me with what the request, how parents request that? Should it say in writing? Can it just be verbal? Should it be a little specific with documentation? I almost kind of suggest that it should say on the third paragraph.
It says,
it
does say.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And then, can you help me with the system of learning results? What is that?
It's the main learning results.
The main learning results.
That's where we get our curriculum.
That's our curriculum is based on the main learning results by law.
As mandated by the state.
Maybe you should put the main learning result. The main.
Aligned with the main learning results instead of the system. Okay.
All set, Laura.
Thank you.
There's someone else. Bobby?
Yeah, I think this just comes back to the same issue that we're going to keep running into about what's controversial and what's sensitive issue. You may not like the decision of the superintendent, but the decision of the superintendent, according to this policy, is final. Now, that doesn't mean you have no other options. You can pull your student from the school. You can homeschool. You can private school. You can send your student to a school that aligns with your beliefs. So, consequently, I don't think we should be able to just have a parent come in and complain about a subject and change it to what they feel is their will.
So do you think parents shouldn't do that at all? They should
No,
have-
no, they
well,
have the option to come in and try to, get the superintendent to
which
work
is what this policy is, right?
to work with them, and get a different, perspective. But you're not going to make everybody happy, is what I'm saying. So consequently, if you're that dead set against your student getting involved in that issue, you still have different options, and that's your right. So consequently, you're not going to make everybody happy. And I don't think we should have a policy that makes everybody happy, because what you're going to run into is you're going to run into somebody coming into the office and complaining that their child should not be taught this subject, even though to everybody else it's not a controversial issue, but you have a right to take your student and homeschool that student.
Those aren't viable options for everybody.
It's always an option.
Really? Okay, so
It's always-
I would love to send my kids to private school. Can you pay for that, Bobby? Because my
kids.
So it's
Point
not
of order,
an
guys.
example of
Yeah.
a viable
Okay, so
option.
we're gonna
I still
stop the
I
ver-
still have
Hang
the
on.
floor.
Yep. So we're gonna let Robbie discuss have his say. So
So
continue.
getting back to my point is, you're not going to make every parent happy, right, Katie? You still don't make every parent happy today.
We do our best.
Right, and we do our best, and that's the point of the policy. We do our best but to make it black and white and say, look, if a parent comes in and complains that they don't like a subject, that everybody should change that subject so that parent isn't happy with the outcome isn't right, because then you're bending everybody's will to yours, and nobody here would like that to happen to them. So consequently, that's why we try and work with the staff, we try and work with the principal, we try and work with the superintendent to get a different outcome. Now, if you're still not happy with that outcome, we have options.
Is there anything in the policy that this
Hang on.
policy specifically
Hang on.
recommendation of changing?
I'm done.
Okay. So Doug had his hand up.
I guess from my just to talk out loud for my own mental clarification with this is that we have teaching about controversial, sensitive issues, and we're discussing the exemption from required instruction. And if the parents of a student have an issue with a controversial topic, they're going to meet with the teacher, and the teacher can provide an alternative path for them to try to meet the demands. If it's a controversial topic that isn't required by the state, I don't see why the teacher wouldn't be able to find an alternative path. If we're dealing with all these other things that philosophical beliefs aren't something that are a mandatory curriculum thing, I'm sure the teacher would be more than accommodating to try to figure that out. And that's why on this policy it highlights to the principal if the teacher can't figure it out. If the principal and the teacher can't figure out how to deal with this, or maybe the teacher's real steadfast in it, then it would go to the superintendent. I'm getting the impression that the only reason we need the superintendent's the final law is if a parent finds something that's technically required as part of the curriculum by the state or federal government. The superintendent would need to put her foot down, or the superintendent would need to put their foot down to say that, no, you have to be taught this because this is a requirement by the state or federal government. As far as the philosophical stuff that might also make its way into the curriculum, and I'm sure that we're all thinking things that might come up in like health ed or something like that, I think that the teacher, being an educated personnel, would be more than capable to come up with an alternative plan to deal with these and not force any kind of extreme uncomfortableness onto a student, because those aren't required by the federal or state government. So I think what we're doing here is we're arguing about things that probably aren't even going to present themselves. And I don't think that we need to micromanage we're exuding our own personal thing into this. Personally, from reading this policy, I think that everything would be figured out as needed be, right?
Yeah. Jill, can I make a motion to end discussion and move it to vote?
Absolutely. Right. So, we have a motion on the floor to move to vote. So, the only change that I see is a change to add the main learning results.
Yep.
And I didn't. What's the other one?
It's main learning results in paragraph 1, and then
Oh,
A,
and A, okay.
and also on page 2, the second paragraph in red will be changed to the main learning results.
Okay. And also removing IMBAA until we figure out
Yes.
where that policy lies. Okay. So for first reading with those changes, moving it on to second reading. All those in favor?
Of ending discussion.
Yeah.
Huh?
Of ending discussion.
Of ending
Yes.
discussion, sorry. Of ending
Ending
discussion.
discussion first.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I said no to end the discussion.
We
just so
got
it's
it.
known.
We got it.
We had to have the
I got
two-thirds.
you. I'm coming. I was going to say, and those were against. All right. So now we'll move on to voting for this to move on to the second reading with the changes as we've discussed. All those in favor? All those not in favor? We will move down to committee reports. We'll start with finance and facilities. I need to do that? Oh, administrators may go home.
Yes, you guys go ahead.
I was like, I did have one thing for,
Oh, you wanted to say something with board comment?
yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's all right.
It was getting late and I.
They've had long days. Finance and
I
facilities.
So I was, yeah. First off, on the agenda as a technicality, it says May 8th, 2022. Just as a.
I mean, they might have met.
I don't know if it matters, but.
I remember that meeting.
Like it was just the other year.
Sorry.
I first I want to acknowledge that Sam, I appreciate your notes for the meeting today. I'm going to try to paraphrase them because I don't think I need to get too caught up in the weeds. But basically, we talked about the copier lease motions that were presented today at the board meeting, and we approved those. We did go revisit the 2014 bus quote. So it seems like ultimately that we're still kind of debating on whether we put $10,000 into repairing it and trying to reincorporate it actively into the fleet, or trying to sell it. And it seems like we're still kind of on the fence with that. Let's see, consider maybe this. So with that, there's a bunch of other sub-agenda items that kind of came up, but I feel like we can revisit that. Wood pellet boiler, we have an update. We were talking to Oxford, the school over in Oxford, and it turns out they're not interested in it. We discussed real quickly, do we try to still release the equipment, and what to do about that because we don't use it. The new business, we went over the financial reports really quickly. The revenue is very comparable last year for the percentage of amount of revenue that has been, what's the term for it? Dispersed, I think is what the term we would use. Expenses are on pace. School nutrition revenue, we didn't really go over the audit prep too much and the year-end process much just because of time. The bus issue kind of soaked up a lot of time with that. The ARP funds, we did talk about they're having a little bit left over, and we were debating on what project to put that into. Some of the things that were kind of thrown out was playground or some sort of truck or van kind of thing to try to use the ARP funds for. Again, that was nothing definitive really came of that. We're still working on that. So, and then the last thing that Sam kind of threw out is that you did what was the report that I feel like you should deserve some acknowledgement for?
The ARP performance report.
Yes.
A federal report? Yes.
Yeah.
Federal report, that's
Yeah. It sounded, even in the 30 seconds of you talking about it, sounded like a lot of work. So
Team effort,
Yes.
Kathy, Katie, and myself.
So
sums up the facilities and finances, right? Did I miss anything?
We also didn't have one from the previous update, but it wasn't really anything. Just the capital project for the state application with the Harriman from the meeting before that we didn't get. Yeah, so that was the only thing from that one before.
CAI technology.
CAI, short and sweet. We reviewed handbooks for the school year 24-25. So we looked at pre-K 8, 9-12, athletic handbooks for middle and high school, and the co-curricular handbook. And it was Kathy's last CAI meeting with us. So thank you so much, Kathy. We'll miss you.
Will those books come to the board?
They will not. They're just a review.
Yeah, that's a new change too. Yeah, new.
We'll move down to 9 board member comments. Laura.
I'll let them know your comment tomorrow. We do meet in the morning.
Also, I just wanted to congratulate the 8th graders on raising over $20,000 for their 8th grade trip in just a few short months. So kudos to the staff at the middle school, the volunteers, the parents, the grandparents, and other people that had stepped up to make that a reality for those kids. And I just really appreciate all the effort that went into that. So 20,000 donations in just a few short months.
Great job. I saw Doug first. Sorry, Diane.
I just want to say that I think it's important to acknowledge that I value everybody having differing opinions, and I know that my opinion differs quite often too. I think it's an excellent part of the process that goes on around here. So I think it's an important thing. The process of discussing as a group differing opinions is a very important thing to me. So I just think that I just hope it remains like that we all welcome all the opinions to try to get to a better place with that. So.
First, I'd like to say thank you to all the staff members in our community, making a difference in the lives of all our kids and families. And I would like to congratulate the academic decathlon members who went to Pittsburgh, and they came in second place. Oh, and one more thing. I went to the high school to sit with Randy for his workshop. There were 2 of us, myself and Nicole's husband, and it was really informative.
No, it's okay.
I did also receive the annual report for the proposed budget and just some feedback for the next year. As I've looked at a few other districts, I didn't notice in this one where the impact is normally kind of the impact to taxpayers based off from, we had that on a slide at one point. But some of the other districts that I had reviewed had a lot of summaries, and I think we do it in our towns as well. I think that would be really impactful in some of this. They had transportation, they had operations, they had different things like that. And I just think not everyone's going to watch the hours and hours of meetings. And I think that, this is kind of what a lot of people that don't have kids or in the district or they do, this is kind of the summary that they flip through and take some time. And so I think that could be something that could be really helpful in next year's opportunity, is including a little more information from the different, what's that?
A newsletter.
Well, I don't even like to call it a newsletter, but I think everyone kind of understands what I'm trying to say. Is it is.
So you're saying like
Yeah.
a little
Right there.
square from an update?
They had
from Jonathan.
pages, like a lot of districts had pages of, there's so much over the
Yeah.
year. And I think when people, I know personally, when you work it every day and you live it, you're like, it's just my work. But when you're trying to, I don't want to say like sell it, but when you're trying to sell it to the community, it is very interesting to see all of the things that everyone does all year long on paper and in those hands. So thank you. Sorry. I'm done.
Real quick, I will echo what others said about teacher appreciation, just really thanking our dedicated educators for all they do in our communities, and we really appreciate you. And also just a PSA to attend the budget meeting next Wednesday at the high school at 6:30.
Anyone else? No? All right, so 10, executive session, 10.1, to enter into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056D, Regional Schools United 4 Association, Education Association, MEA, NEA, Educational Support Professionals.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you.
That's where, I know, it will.